Idou Tavouri is an associate professor of sociology at New York University, known for his work in ethnography, social theory, and qualitative research methods. He earned his PhD from UCLA and focuses on how culture, identity, and social life are created through everyday interactions. His major books include Abductive Analysis, Theorizing Qualitative Research with Stefan Timmermans, which introduced an influential approach to theorizing from data, and Summoned, Identification and Religious Life in a Jewish Neighborhood, an ethnographic study of Orthodox Jewish life in Los Angeles. Tavouri's research emphasizes abductive reasoning and the dynamic relationship between individual experience and social structure, and his contributions have earned recognition in the sociology of culture. Yehuda C. Goodman is a sociologist and anthropologist at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem whose research examines identity, belonging, and cultural negotiation in Israeli society. His work explores how individuals experience conversion, professional ethics, and social integration within institutional and national frameworks, particularly among immigrant and religious communities. Drawing on ethnographic and qualitative methods, Goodman analyzes how modern professional and state discourses intersect with personal and collective identities. His studies contribute to understanding the cultural and psychological dimensions of belonging and the ways institutions shape selfhood in contemporary Israel. This study explores how people at Israel's Rainbow Gathering, an alternative spiritual festival, balance being individuals with feeling part of a community. The researchers found that participants express their individuality through personal growth activities, self-reflection, and spiritual workshops, yet at the same time build strong social bonds through shared meals, group rituals, and physical closeness. These experiences show that personal freedom and community connection aren't opposites but are created together through daily practices. The gathering becomes a space where people can both find themselves and feel unity with others, blending self-expression and solidarity into a shared way of living. The introduction explains that the study looks at how people in alternative spiritual groups, like Israel's Rainbow Gathering, manage to be both independent individuals and part of a close community at the same time. Instead of treating personal freedom and group belonging as opposites, the authors want to show how the two are built together through everyday actions and shared experiences. By focusing on the Rainbow Gathering as a real-life example, they aim to understand how people create a balance between expressing their individuality and forming meaningful connections with others in a communal spiritual setting. The Israeli Rainbow Gathering serves as a central ethnographic case study illustrating how individuality and solidarity intertwine in alternative spiritual communities. Emerging from the global Rainbow Family movement that began in the 1970s United States, the Israeli version combines countercultural ideals with local New Age and neo-pagan influences. It attracts diverse participants seeking personal transformation, communal living, and spiritual connection outside formal religious or institutional settings. The gathering operates without hierarchy, relying on consensus and shared responsibility, and provides a context in which practices of self-expression, such as meditation, workshops, and ritual, coexist with acts of collective unity like group meals, song, and physical closeness. Through this setting, the authors observe how individuals experience freedom and belonging simultaneously, making the Israeli Rainbow Gathering an ideal site to analyze the mutual construction of self and community. Literature review and theoretical framework reviews earlier studies that portrayed New Age and neo-pagan spirituality as self-focused, emphasizing personal experience, autonomy, and inner growth over collective belonging. It then highlights newer ethnographic research showing that these movements also create strong social bonds and shared rituals. To explain this balance, the authors adopt practice theory, which focuses on what people actually do rather than abstract beliefs. They argue that individuality and solidarity are not fixed traits but outcomes of everyday actions. In this framework, individual practices are those that center on personal expression or self-development, while solidarity practices emphasize cooperation, connection, and group unity, allowing both to exist within the same cultural setting. Research setting and methodology explains that the study is based on fieldwork at Israel's Rainbow Gathering, a spiritual community inspired by the American Rainbow Family movement that began in the 1970s counterculture and spread to Israel in the 1990s. The gatherings bring people together to live simply and spiritually in nature, making decisions by group consensus rather than leaders. To understand how individuality and togetherness work in this setting, the researchers joined the gatherings for 3 months, observing daily life, taking part in rituals, and talking with participants. They conducted 15 formal interviews and about 20 informal conversations to capture a wide range of experiences and viewpoints. The data were then analyzed using grounded theory, meaning the researchers built their conclusions directly from what they observed and heard, identifying patterns in how people express both independence and community spirit. The Israeli Rainbow Gathering is presented as a spiritually centered, community-oriented event rooted in the ideals of the international Rainbow Family movement but shaped by local cultural and spiritual influences. Originating in the United States during the 1970s countercultural era, the Rainbow Family promoted communal living, peace, environmental awareness, and non-hierarchical organization. When this model reached Israel in the 1990s, it evolved to reflect the spiritual interests and social realities of Israeli participants, blending global New Age and neo-pagan sensibilities with local interpretations of community, identity, and spirituality. The gatherings became temporary villages in nature where participants sought to live harmoniously, free from the structures and pressures of mainstream society, referred to collectively as Babylon. Each Israeli Rainbow Gathering functions as a self-organized, consensus-based community that operates without formal leaders or institutions. All decisions, ranging from where to set up camp to how food is prepared and distributed, are made collectively in open circles where every participant may speak. The gatherings emphasize equality, inclusiveness, and cooperation, striving to avoid hierarchy and coercion. Consensus is both a practical method and a moral principle, reflecting the belief that true unity emerges through mutual listening and collective agreement rather than authority or majority rule. This participatory form of governance reinforces the ethos that every individual voice carries equal value, aligning spiritual ideals of oneness with democratic social practice. The spiritual dimension of the Israeli Rainbow Gathering is central to its communal life. Activities revolve around meditation, chanting, workshops, and rituals that aim to heighten self-awareness while cultivating a shared spiritual energy. The daily rhythm includes collective meals known as food circles, where participants sit in silence before eating to express gratitude and connection to the earth and one another. Music, singing, and drumming play vital roles in creating a sense of unity, as participants synchronize their movements and voices to produce collective harmony. Such practices transform everyday acts, like cooking, cleaning, and resting, into rituals of mindfulness and togetherness, illustrating how spirituality is embedded in ordinary social interactions. At the same time, the gatherings are designed to create a temporary society where personal freedom and communal life coexist. Individuals are encouraged to pursue their own spiritual journeys through workshops on self-discovery, healing, and expression while simultaneously contributing to the group's well-being. The absence of money, commerce, and digital technology fosters a sense of detachment from external systems and strengthens interpersonal ties. Participants refer to one another as family, and the collective experience is often described as coming home, signaling both emotional intimacy and spiritual belonging. Through this organization, the Israeli Rainbow Gathering becomes a living experiment in how people can build a self-sustaining, spiritually guided community based on voluntary cooperation. The consensus structure, egalitarian ethos, and shared rituals create a moral and practical framework that links individual self-expression with collective solidarity. In this context, spirituality is not confined to private experience, but is enacted through communal practice, turning the gathering into a site where self and society are continually redefined in relation to one another. The pragmatics of individuality looks at how people at the Rainbow Gathering express their individuality through spiritual and self-reflective activities. It focuses on workshops like rebirthing, where participants are encouraged to look inward, confront emotions, and focus on personal growth. The gathering uses the idea of the mirror to describe how others and nature act as reflections of one's inner self, meaning that interactions with people or conflicts are seen as opportunities for self-understanding rather than problems caused by others. Through these practices, individuality becomes a form of spiritual and emotional work that takes place within the community. People are not isolating themselves when they turn inward. Instead, their personal development is seen as contributing to the shared spiritual environment, blending self-discovery with collective experience. Practices of solidarity begins by describing the food circle, a central ritual that brings everyone at the Rainbow Gathering together in a powerful shared experience. Participants sit in a large circle, holding hands in silence or chanting Om before eating. This synchronized action, singing, breathing, and eating together, creates a feeling of unity and equality, where no one is above or below anyone else. The ritual transforms an everyday act like eating into a moment of spiritual connection, reminding everyone that they are part of a larger, harmonious whole. Through these practices, the group experiences solidarity not as an idea but as something physically felt and emotionally charged. Another important aspect of solidarity at the gathering is the creation of symbolic boundaries between Rainbow and the outside world, referred to as Babylon. Rainbow represents simplicity, openness, and peace, while Babylon symbolizes materialism, competition, and social hierarchy. Participants leave behind money, phones, and other modern conveniences at the edge of the camp, marking their separation from everyday life. This boundary setting gives the gathering its moral framework, allowing people to live according to values of equality and cooperation rather than status or possessions. By defining what they are not, rejecting the systems of Babylon, participants strengthen their sense of belonging within the rainbow world they build together. The section also explores how physical affection functions as a form of social glue within the community. Long, warm hugs are a common greeting and expression of care, offered not just between friends but among all participants. These hugs are understood as acts of spiritual openness and emotional honesty, replacing verbal communication with bodily connection. They reinforce the idea that everyone is part of one family, and that love can be expressed freely and safely. This kind of physical closeness helps dissolve barriers between strangers and creates an atmosphere of trust and emotional intimacy that deepens the collective bond. Finally, this section explains that the solidarity formed at the Rainbow Gathering continues beyond the event itself. Many participants remain connected through friendships, shared living arrangements, and mutual support networks that extend into everyday life. For example, people may help one another during personal crises or gather in smaller mini-rainbows throughout the year. These ongoing relationships show that the sense of unity created at the gathering is not temporary, but continues to shape participants' social lives and identities afterward. The rainbow community thus becomes more than an event; it becomes a living network of shared values, emotional ties, and mutual care that persists long after the physical gathering has ended. Articulations between self and community explores how the talking circle serves as a central space where individuality and community are brought into balance. During these circles, participants sit together and speak one at a time using a talking stick, ensuring that everyone has an equal opportunity to share their thoughts. The process is slow and deliberate, designed to promote listening, reflection, and mutual respect. This structure embodies the community's ideal of equality, allowing people to express their personal experiences while maintaining a sense of collective unity. The talking circle therefore becomes both a practical tool for decision-making and a symbolic expression of the group's values, showing how personal voice and social harmony can coexist. However, the authors note that maintaining this balance is not always easy. Tensions often arise when individuals dominate conversations, focus too heavily on themselves, or use the circle as a stage for self-display. Such behavior, described as ego, is viewed negatively because it disrupts the cooperative atmosphere and shifts attention away from shared purpose. When this happens, participants may gently intervene by reminding each other to stay mindful, listen more, or speak from the heart rather than the ego. These moments reveal the fine line between self-expression and self-centeredness, showing that individuality within the rainbow gathering is valued but must remain in harmony with the collective spirit. Beyond the talking circle, the community relies on informal traditions and unwritten rules to maintain order without hierarchy. There are no formal leaders or enforcers, but participants follow shared customs, like consensus decision-making, mutual respect, and the rejection of coercion, to resolve conflicts. When disagreements occur, they are handled through open discussion or collective rituals rather than authority. This informal governance system reflects the group's belief that harmony comes from personal responsibility and mutual awareness rather than external control. Together, these practices demonstrate how the Rainbow Gathering sustains a delicate balance between freedom and structure, allowing individuality and solidarity to continually shape one another in everyday life. The discussion explains that individuality and solidarity are not opposites but are created together through everyday actions and shared rituals within the Rainbow Gathering. The authors challenge the common view that New Age communities are mainly about personal spirituality or self-expression, showing instead that personal growth and communal unity constantly shape each other. They introduce the idea of the solidarization of the individual, meaning that people's sense of self is transformed through collective experiences. By participating in group rituals, shared meals, and decision-making processes, individuals come to define themselves as part of a larger whole. In this way, the gathering demonstrates how personal identity and social connection are woven together rather than standing in conflict. The conclusion emphasizes that the rainbow gathering shows how individuality and community can exist together in a flexible and balanced way. Rather than forcing people to choose between being independent or belonging to a group, the gathering allows both to develop at the same time. Through shared rituals, consensus decision-making, and collective living, participants experience a sense of unity while still being free to express themselves. This fluid coexistence demonstrates that personal freedom and social connection are not opposing values but intertwined aspects of spiritual and social life. The authors also argue that this finding challenges traditional ways of thinking about religion and spirituality in modern society. Many studies treat religious movements as either personal quests for meaning or collective systems of belief, but the rainbow gathering blurs that line. It shows that spiritual life can be both deeply individual and profoundly communal, shaped by practical, everyday actions rather than rigid doctrines. The authors suggest that viewing alternative spiritual movements through this lens helps explain how people today create meaning and belonging outside conventional religious institutions, offering a more realistic and nuanced way to understand contemporary spirituality. You arrive at a dirt road in the hills and find a hand-painted sign, "Welcome home." A volunteer with dusty feet gives you a long, unhurried hug, asks you to leave your phone and car behind, and points you down a path toward camp. Crossing that gate is the first lesson. Rainbow is meant to feel like home, and Babylon is everything outside: money, status, rushing, and command. Inside, there aren't officials or tickets. There are traditions, and you learn them by doing. By late morning, someone calls food circle. Hundreds form one wide ring around the main fire. Hands link, a simple song loops until voices settle into a shared ohm, and then pots emerge from the kitchen. Eating is slow and synchronized, more like a small ritual than a meal. The circle, the chant, the clap, the ladle passing from hand to hand. The choreography matters because it makes unity tangible. The point isn't the soup, it's the feeling that everyone's attention and breath line up for a few minutes each day. Afternoons are for workshops that turn inward. A rebirthing session asks you to breathe in a rhythm, shout out a feeling, then lie still and let whatever comes, come. No one diagnoses you. The method assumes that insight starts inside you. Around camp, people talk about the mirror, the idea that the world reflects your own unfinished business back at you. If someone annoys you, the rule of thumb is to ask what that reaction says about you before you blame them. Here, self-work is not selfish, it is treated as spiritual housekeeping that you do in public view. Evenings bring the talking circle, where a stick manages the room. When you hold it, you speak; when you don't, you listen. The aim is consensus, which can take a long time. On good nights, the format gives shy people a true turn and leaves everyone feeling seen. On hard nights, someone rides the stick, talking to hear themselves talk. People call that ego, and they dislike it, not because self-expression is bad, but because it blocks the group from moving together. The line between honest voice and performance is policed gently but clearly. Rules aren't written, but they exist as expectations. One weekend, a newcomer drove his van into camp instead of leaving it at the welcome area. A veteran threatened to puncture the tires and stormed off when the driver refused. Most people agreed the car didn't belong near the fire, but they also agreed the threat didn't belong either. That episode captures the balancing act: strong norms without cops, many traditions without formal law, and constant negotiation about how far freedom extends when you live pressed up against other people. Touch is part of the local language. Hugs last longer than you expect, and they are offered widely, not just to intimates. For newcomers, it can feel awkward before it feels natural. Over time, the hug stops signaling private closeness and starts signaling a community-level bond. The camp itself becomes an intimate space. That embodied warmth doesn't end when the tents come down. Friend groups, rainbow houses, and year-round check-ins carry the ties back to city life. When a member was badly injured in a bus bombing, dozens cycled through the hospital with music and presents until she was discharged. The solidarity practiced at mealtime and circle shows up again as mutual aid.